Hello and welcome to my research video essay. My name is Mikohl and we'll be discussing about kimchi from Korea. Now kimchi is a side dish that is usually served free when you eat at Korean places. My research project draws inspiration from Kim Kwang-ok's reading on Chinese food in Korea, which discusses how Chinese food in Korea provides a terrain where cultural meanings of life, experiences in the fields of politics, economy and society are contested. He argues that since the 1960s, many Chinese dishes have been Koreanized and transformed to fit Korean tastes. But kimchi is special and thought to be popularized in the Three Kingdoms period of Korea spanning from 57 BC to 668 AD and through the Silla dynasty from 57 BC to 935 AD. The Silla dynasty overlaps the Three Kingdoms because they were strong and conquered the other two kingdoms, Baekje in 660 and Goguryeo in 668. When Silla attained power, kimchi was popularized because the prevalent religion was Buddhism, which the Silla promoted, and Buddhism came into Korea from China in the 4th century. Since Buddhism promoted a vegetarian diet, kimchi became widely consumed and adopted. Thus, kimchi appears to be central in Korea's history such that it can even be coined Korea's iconic dish. Yet, even with such historical backgrounds and clear origins, there has been massive controversy over the ownership of kimchi between China and Korea. In lieu of these disputes, Korea's taste for chili powder marks a distinction between kimchi and China's preserved vegetables, bao cai. Since 2012, China has tried to lay claim to kimchi's identity while Koreans have tried to defend theirs. This raises questions about kimchi's origins and, more importantly, the reasons that provoke these tensions. I have three contentions in response. First, gathering the evidence on the genealogy of kimchi to identify its origins. Second, discussing the fundamental differences between kimchi and bao cai in light of the recent controversy. These findings will distinguish between the two types of vegetables and shed light on which nation kimchi belongs to. Third, situating the lens of a political ecosystem in the construction of food, kimchi, and national identity. Through analyzing the various nationalistic, social, economic, and political agendas, this essay proposes a conclusion to this kimchi controversy. The controversy started around 2012 when China banned imports of kimchi from Korea because kimchi failed to meet China's food hygiene standards, which was based off China's preserved vegetables bao cai. And in doing so, China was claiming that kimchi was a variation of bao cai. Yet, there exists this separate and exclusive international food codex for kimchi which China failed to use. To look at the genealogy of kimchi, we need to look at its recipe. This recipe was taken from Colorado State University. There are many ingredients used, but I want to highlight Korean red pepper, also known as gochu, because it is exclusive and specific only to kimchi. The cultivation of gochu was recorded in many historical documents of the Three Kingdoms period. The Samguk-sagi is a historical book compiled by Kim Bu-sik, a scholar under royal command by King In-jong in the year 1145. It compiles the history of the Three Kingdoms and unified Silla dynasty, which spans from 57 BC to 935 AD. The compilation contains many books from the different kingdoms and is probably the oldest text and very important in Korean history. In this record, we see the words chodo and a description of gochu being cultivated in chodo. So we can infer that kimchi was already being fermented with gochu in chodo as early as the Three Kingdoms period. There have been scholars such as Jo Jae-soon who argued chili pepper or gochu was first introduced to Korea from Mexico after the Japanese invasion of Korea in 1592. However, this source is completely false because important and older historical texts like the Samguk-sagi have refuted such recent claims. From scientific evidence, Korean gochu is of a different pepper species from Mexico's. The Scoville heat unit, Shu, of gochu is less than 1,000, while Mexico's and other species are much higher. Kimchi is said to only ferment under less than 1,000 Shu. There is therefore no doubt that kimchi and gochu existed way before the 1500s. There is also archaeological evidence that proves the existence of stone jars where kimchi was traditionally stored underground in the past to ferment and get through winter. This picture was taken from Bokjusa Temple, which existed around 553 AD. Finding it at a temple is significant because it was the Buddhists who had a vegetarian diet, and they were the ones who ate kimchi the most. So it is clear that kimchi has its origins in Korea. Next, kimchi has a different fermentation process compared to pao thai. Kimchi goes through 2 stages of fermentation. The first stage is to rub salt on the vegetables, and the second stage is to season the vegetables with gochu and other ingredients. This allows the storage process to continuously generate nutritional substances and lactic acid bacteria, which are probiotics that are beneficial for gut health. In contrast, pao thai only has 1 fermentation stage, which is through pickling in flavored salted brine. Pickling is essentially soaking the vegetables in a salt or acidic solution. Plus, the storage of pao thai occurs only after the vegetables have been sterilized. There is therefore no continuous growth of healthy bacteria like kimchi. Finally, we want to look at kimchi through the lens of a political ecosystem. This means considering how political, economic, and social-cultural agendas are used to contest food and national identities. In terms of politics, Korea has been riding the Korean wave and made its presence more prominent on an international scale. The rising K-culture, K-pop, K-dramas saw rising global interest in Korean food. Kimchi culture in particular has been a way for Korea to brand themselves internationally and thereby increasing the power and influence they have globally. From an economic perspective, kimchi culture as a form of national branding has increased global interest in Korean products, which has bolstered Korea's economy. From a social-cultural view, kimchi is promoted as a healthy and nutritious food. Having been listed in Health magazine, a US publication, as one of the top 5 healthiest food in the world, it is no doubt that Korea's presence has permeated even into the West. Plus, the long-running practice of kimjang during winter, where families would gather to make kimchi in large amounts and share with their relatives and the community, fosters a very strong sense of national identity amongst Koreans. This practice was recognized as one of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2013. By situating kimchi in this political ecosystem, we see that agendas of social, cultural, economic, and political agendas intertwine to entrench food history with national identities to compete with other nations over power, influence, and economy. Ultimately, tensions of today are fueled less by ownership and origins of food and more by endeavors towards international prestige. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope this has been insightful.